Once upon a time, in Mathsland, there were three functions, three evil functions. These functions were sin, cos, and tan. They were bandits of the worst kind, spending their time roaming Mathsland, stealing everything they could get their grubby little fingers on. Once, they even had the audacity to steal King Pi's golden circle. They didn't care about the numbers and functions they stole from. They didn't care that when they stole things, they often destroyed other things in the process. They didn't care when they dented the sphere of harmony, or when they sliced the top off the Great Pyramid to make it little more than an irregular shape, or when they scrawled graffiti along the outside walls of Maths Lab Inc. that, at first glance, seemed to prove 2 times 2 did not in fact equal 4, but 5. These heinous acts were always unprovoked and always went unpunished, for the three evil functions were never caught. The closest any function ever came was when Mrs. Factorial shrieked for justice after the cyber theft of her new gardening ebook, The Many Logs of Mathsland, whose fanbase was growing exponentially. But it turned out to be derivative work, and Secant was squared away for a long time. Anyway, our three evil functions, sin, cos, and tan, had grown so confident in their thieving abilities that they started to dream of the most daring theft ever conceived. They had set their sights on the most valuable object in all of Mathsland. They were going to steal the Triangle of Righteousness. Now, it was rumoured that the Triangle of Righteousness was not only worth 10 times its weight in pure gold, but that it also held magical properties. What these properties were, no one knew for sure, for no one who had gazed upon the triangle had ever been the same again. It was even said that in the dark days of two-dimensionality, it was the Triangle of Righteousness that had transformed the circle of conflict into the sphere of harmony, bringing about the beginning of the enlightened age of three-dimensionality. And although one never knows whether such legends stem from truth or falsehood, our three functions were convinced enough to set their plans in motion. They searched for 4-2 months before they had any success, but when they finally found out where the triangle was supposedly hidden, they set off at once on what was going to turn out to be the last attempted theft of their evil careers. As they approached the Cave of Perfection, the three functions entered with only a little trepidation. All the stories they had heard about how the triangle changes functions were not enough to sway them from the promise of unparalleled wealth that drew them on. Eventually, some way down into the Cave of Perfection, the three evil functions emerged into an enormous chamber, and there it was, the Triangle of Righteousness. It was fully 3 times bigger than any of the functions, and as they gazed upon it, they could almost feel the warm touch of gold. It shone. Even in the dim light of the cave's chamber, it glowed with its own inner light. They were full of awe in the presence of such a beautiful treasure. For almost a whole minute, they just looked up at this amazing triangle, a triangle that made all other triangles barely more than 3 straight lines thrown together in any old way. But never once did they think of turning around and leaving the triangle untouched, unsullied by their evil intentions. Eventually the awe faded, and Sin moved towards the seemingly unprotected artifact. Reaching up, Sin grabbed hold of the nearest vertex of the triangle, the right-angled corner, but at the very moment Sin touched the triangle's right angle, a flash of light exploded throughout the chamber. Cos and Tan were thrown backwards, and as they came to, they saw their partner in crime coming towards them. Except it was no longer Sin. It was Sign. The Triangle of Righteousness had transformed Sin into a true trigonometric function. They could see it in their former companion's eyes. Swirling around and around Sign's pupils was a ratio, the ratio of opposite over hypotenuse. Sin would never be the same again. Sin would be Sign. But, true to their nature, as Sign stumbled out of the chamber a mathematical marvel, Cos and Tan could not help but be drawn back to the triangle before them. its magical properties not scaring them off as it should have done, but only pulling them in closer with the hope of riches beyond anything they had ever known. Cos moved forward next, careful to stay away from the right angle that had so disastrously changed sine. Instead, reaching for the side across from the dangerous 90 degrees, Cos clutched the hypotenuse, and another burst of blinding energy, and Cos was no longer Cos. Tan had to watch as a reborn function stepped forward. Cosine. Just as with sine, Tan could see a madness in cosine's eyes. Another ratio, a burning need to divide an adjacent by a hypotenuse. Never before had Tan witnessed such utter transformation, such driving need in the eyes of a function. Tan should have run far. But Tan could not turn away from the triangle. His magic seemed to pull, seemed to whisper secrets Tan could only dream of knowing. And so, the only function left in the chamber, Tan moved towards destiny. Trying desperately to avoid destruction, Tan snatched at the triangle with both hands, not the right angle and not the hypotenuse, but at the two legs, and once more the light burst forth. That was when Tan saw the truth, saw what it was Tan was made to do. All this time, stealing and destroying, wasted, dividing. That was what Tan should truly be doing, dividing. But not dividing anything, dividing opposites by adjacents, the ratio. It was all about the ratio. It had always been about the ratio. Tan had become tangent. And so our story draws to an end. Three functions transformed from doing evil to seeking out and helping all those in need of trigonometric ratios. Sine was obsessed with resolving conflict, being drawn in by the nature of opposites. Attracted to the irresistible nature of things adjacent to one another, cosine continually joined people together. And tangent could not help but keep sine and cosine working together, forever a team. The three trigonometeers were doing all that was good and right in the world. And their battle cry? Well, one for all and all for one was taken, and they wanted to come up with something a little more appropriate. So, Ka, Toa, Sokatoa.